biology. He has been involved in a number of EU projects, and we're really delighted, Lenny, that you've chose to come to Edinburgh Napier to continue your career. So over to you.
Thank you so much, Gary. It's just introduction, and I'm absolutely delighted to be here. This progression in my career, which is so far at the pinnacle of my career, I would say, after many years of blood, sweat, and tears, I would call it. Any better? Oh. Okay, is that better? Yeah, thank you. So I would like to try and share with you an overview of my research journey to this point. I'd like to start with just a general introduction of my education, employment, research grants that have been instrumental in this point. And because it's I've had a research focused career, I think I expected that when I started, but it's been very challenging, I have to say, and there's been lots of help along the way, and there's probably not enough time to acknowledge all the people who helped me in my career. But I'd like to introduce the talk as a kind of love your liver. So, I mean, it's not just you love your liver, me love my liver. I love liver because of research. And it's not, you see the little Lenny the liver, or whatever we can call him here. This little guy, I mean, to be honest, I mean, a lot of people don't really think about the liver too much because it's an uncomplaining organ. Things don't, when it just keeps on going, it's a kind of very elastic organ, so it's adaptable, it's very, take a lot of punishment. It needs to because of its role in the body as a central regulator and metabolic engine house and research. So I'll give you an overview of my research journey in brief, and then I'd like to move to more what we're kind of moved to and what we're doing now in the actual research field, and give you some pointers of future directions for myself and for the research here in Napier. And delighted I am to move from a very University of Edinburgh centric career. I was obsessed with it. It just happened my family commitments, city, and they kind of still are. So I'm very pleased to arrive at this point, as I say. So I'll show you this pointer on the. It's just the right. I see. Classic.
Well, there is a pointer, but it doesn't work on this screen.
No, of course not. I mean, it's far too high tech a screen for pointer. So you kind of have to point with this thing. So my journey, the early years. So this is really just to give you, where I'm from and this sort of thing. So these are not just random, images or photos of a cat and a girl. That happens to be Sophie. It's my granddaughter. So she unfortunately couldn't come today. She had a special event with her pals. So said, can you make it Saturday or Sunday? Give it a go, but no. But Sophie has mad skills actually in preparing PowerPoint presentations, which she can whip up one in about 10 minutes on any subject you want. Yesterday, the other day was on the Earth. And it was on animals, and she's crazy about animals. And she has 2 cats, 10 fish, and 12 minutes. So, and Luna is our cat, and she insisted to show that she could contribute to this. Anyway, so that's Sophie, and maybe see Luna later on. So here we are, Edinburgh Napier, Craiglockhart campus. I knew it in the olden days. I think it was Craiglockhart College in education, used to teach the teachers and all that. So, and I was just, I thought, hang on, familiar. So actually, it's, as the crow flies, it's only about 500 yards from my school, Firhill High School. So, you know, I've not travelled. I've been on a plane, and I highlight 61 Otsgangs Park because that's where I was born, in council house there, the youngest of 7 children, 9 of us in that house, and school just a few hundred yards from there. And my mum lived there for 61 years, actually. So I'm a local person, shall we say. And if I, kind of go over there as King's Building, so I worked there for years, and Royal Infirmary as well. So I'm pleased to say I managed to stay kind of Edinburgh centric. So this is just to, try an attempt to, give you an overview of my research journey in education and employment and grants. So which came first, the chicken or the egg? For me, in a research-based career, you need the chicken, I suppose, because I needed a job to kick things off, But before that, my degree was in physiology, not physiotherapy, physiology. So that's the original kind of systems biology. So we studied all the systems in the body, and couldn't deliver at the time, but I thought extra special of it then, but certainly grew into it later on. And in between my PhD and receipt of my PhD, and I did a postgraduate certificate in education. So I needed to fill the gap because I wasn't sure on embarking on a research career at the time. So as you can see, I was going to draw vertical lines between employment and grants, but really London Underground or something. So I would like to focus here really on, I've had quite a varied, the first 15 years, say, can't believe I'm saying that, cardiovascular research, worked at King's Buildings with Professor John Mullins in molecular cardiovascular research, and then at a teaching stint, which is one of the toughest jobs in the world in secondary school, and actually went back to my old school. Met some of the teachers there. That's quite a weird experience. As a, from the other side of the fence. So I've also, after my PhD, I worked in cancer research and esophageal cancer. So I've kind of moved around the GI system, the gastroenterology track. So, and it's a very interesting area, very still intractable disease, esophageal cancer. So then I was self-employed for a while. I was got a black taxi license and did knowledge and taxis for a bit to pay the bills. I was also doing my own kind of self-funded research. I was still publishing a paper here and there. So it was, I was dead keen on science. Then I worked in a malaria lab for a bit, which was really enjoyed that. And there's a liver stage malaria, which chat about later afterwards maybe. So since in the last 15 years, I've been working hepatology, which means liver. anything HEPA, the liver, study of the liver. So I'm interested in all things liver, biology, and pathobiology of liver. And you can see I worked in industry, Ockham Biosciences. I was as Director of Innovation, which is grant writing. And the first grant I wrote for industry, we got for the company, and then we didn't get 3 after that. So a very fickle business, getting funding, Then I carried on in bioengineering after working hepatology up at the Royal Infirmary, and I was interested in, bioengineering approaches to constructing models of human liver in the lab. So to do that, you need lots of sort of technical gizmos and equipment and stuff, and also the technologies to interrogate your cells and your models in the dish once you've constructed them. So this was an interesting phase. And, so coupled with that, in this dotted line, which we start quite a while ago, and around the turn of the millennium, I was still doing my PhD, but managed to get two major grants during that time. I had to, because the initial funding was only for 2.5 years. So as I say, it's not easy sort of trying to generate the funds to propel career, as it were. And it's been quite a challenge, but managed to hold it together. And, trying to be adaptive and collaborate with people, which is a big thing. Eva mentioned that. And, in your paper. And so this is a big part of my research, is a collaborative, multidisciplinary approach. So, and here, if we come to this sort of modern era, if you like, I've had several grants from the UKRI, that's UK Research and Innovation now, and which has culminated in the current grant, which is called Halt Ronan, and I'll explain a bit about that in a moment. And this is I was the coordinator for this grant, so I was leading together 20 institutes around Europe, and we, amazingly, it was out of 8 consortia, but we were ranked top. 8.4 million euros grant, and thanks to Boris, though, his chums, not be political, Ben Elton said, but we had to sort of abdicate from the coordinator role, and guaranteed from Horizon Europe, UKRI. So we have a grant of 1.34 million, and this is what we're working on at the moment. So hope to share a bit about that with you. But the other, the fourth pillar, which I put, is papers. So for one to complement the other and continue along, you need, be in employment, you need grants. To get grants, you need papers. So this is where we come from. Go back one of the, you can notice at the bottom here, the DILI network, which is Drug-Induced Liver Injury Network. This is key in developing the current research grant and theme we're on. So this, just to mention briefly, the COST action is a cooperation in science and technology, COST, and we built up a almost pan-European group of countries, and over 100 or 130, I think it is, people were registered with COST. A massive array of disciplinary expertise in the area of hepatology, liver research and clinical hepatology and translational hepatology. So this DILI network's been instrumental in putting the levers and mechanisms in place to get such a big grant as the Horizon Europe grants. The collaboration is a critical part of such endeavours. So what's it all about? Well, I don't know if you can remember from your biology in school or later on, sort of what the liver looks like actually, and where it's positioned. So it's in your upper right quadrant. It's about 3 or 4 pounds in weight, 1.5 to 2 kilograms, depending on your size. And it's made up of these repeating units. So this is quite handy for us guys who are trying to model it, because when you break it down again, this sort of lobule thing, hexagonal shape, like a cake, take a slice of that cake, it's called liver acinus, and this is the functional unit of the liver. So, you know, it's analogous to the functional unit of the kidney, the nephron, you know, involved in excretion in the kidney. But this is the functional unit, and we try to replicate this in the dish. So what does it do, the liver? Well, we heard it's the most important organ. It's the largest internal organ in the body. It's 3 or 4 pounds. It's hierarchical structures, a billion of these lobules. There's 1 billion of these functional units per liver. There's over 100 billion cells in your liver. So, yeah, it's incredible. You know, range of vital functions it performs. You know, from immune functions, and it's, you know, intimately involved in regulating immune response and like blood clotting and this sort of thing, and produces proteins like albumin for the that's produced in the blood, and it's most abundant blood protein. So these 5 functions are classed as metabolic, synthetic, and detoxification. Detox alcohol, okay, or things you eat as well. So this is rough guide the liver function. So I mentioned the papers. So these are just to be an overview of sort of stuff we do. And in the Journal of Hepatology is the kind of the premier journal in the field of hepatology. So and the last author is usually a senior author, is not relegated to that. We recently kind of set the scene of liver research in Europe to some extent in the context of DILI, this drug-induced liver injury, or how to better sort of address the hepatotoxicity problem of drug development. We've done this also in a recent these consensus papers, you know, influence the way, you know, regulatory processes work, and hopefully people are taking notice, and also roadmap for DILI research in Europe. So we're you know, we're involved at quite a nice level in the field. So just here is an earlier paper at the end of my PhD. My PhD was in bioartificial liver systems, which is like kidney dialysis, and it's still support patients in between liver failure and transplants, the shortage of. And lastly, this paper is just an example of, you know, work in the area of liver cancer we've been doing. All these badges in the corner, these are just acknowledgements, like snooker players wearing them now, tennis players. We acknowledge our funding sources and major contributors. What is the problem in this chronic liver disease? As one of the major, is the major cause of liver disease includes hepatotoxicity, drug-induced liver injury, liver cancer, hepatitis, also this thing called MASLD. Now, this is, just another way, this is fatty liver disease. So what is MASLD? So it's the most common chronic liver disease. It's called, and its technical name is metabolic dysfunction associated steatotic liver. Another way of saying liver develops fat. And this is a problem because it's can progress to stages such as MASH, is inflammatory. spectrum of conditions. And it's estimated it affects around 2 billion people worldwide. And there's a lack of therapeutics and diagnostic biomarkers diagnose patients with that. The liver is an uncomplaining organ. Go to get a test in the clinic, probably already liver something else wrong. You're at an more advanced stage than should be. So we're looking for early diagnostic tests for detecting fatty liver disease at an earlier stage. So I've kind of got the spectrum here from normal liver, this kind of healthy looking triangle, red triangle, and steatosis is simply fatty liver disease, and that's probably in around 30%, maybe 40% of the population. The epidemiology figures are showing this. And this can progress to this MASH, steatohepatitis, inflammation phase, and even cirrhosis and cancer. So, and there's a surge in the global prevalence of this because of the diet and, you know, Western diet, so-called McDonald's diet, where there's high cholesterol prevalence and metabolic syndrome or genetic factors. So, and coupled with this is an increase in the metabolic syndrome, they call it. So this is obesity and diabetes and kidney disease and cardiometabolic disease. Later, so there's this Maslow continuum of disease that progresses from health to MASL or steatotic liver disease, MASH, fibrosis, cirrhosis, and even cancer. So we can detect earlier when these events are occurring, and we can stop people getting serious liver diseases later on. Okay. Just a word on inflammation, because this is all about, you know, the driving factor on all this more serious inflammation. So it's an inflammation-driven problem once you get past this phase of steatosis here. And inflammation is not always bad. You know, it appears bad later on in disease conditions. But, you know, inflammation occurs all the time in the body. And, you know, a wound healing response is inflammation. So there's good inflammation and bad inflammation. When it gets to the MASH stage, you're looking at bad inflammation. This is what, if you take a histology sample, you know, pathologist, human liver, take a slice of it, microscope, this is what you see. Fat droplets shouldn't be there, you know. Liver should have less than 5%, you know, that's maybe. I was trying to explain that the steatosis is the fat droplets, and it's a hallmark of this condition. And the MASH phase is lipid droplets plus the inflammation. And this MASH has this fibrogenic phenotype, so the progressing eventually to liver fibrosis and cirrhosis. So there's actually clinical tests for MASLD and MASH, and these are, you go to the hospital, so they're not, you know, they're not picking up patients at an early phase. So liver biopsies, a needle about long, in the liver, and the sample's taken, but without risk, and you know, it's not clearly not a screening tool for the population, and other tests that are not conclusive. As I say, you're going in with a, you know, probably asymptomatic, you know, often asymptomatic, but there's something wrong, and you know, trying to pinpoint if it's a liver or not requires these invasive tests. So what does the epidemiology look like? Well, I mentioned percentages. So the heat map here shows quite deep red in the southern hemisphere, so that suggests the adoption of the Western diet, plus potentially the genetic factors as well, is driving higher percentage in the southern hemisphere. So, but of course, it's not good everywhere, basically. So we have we developed this grant, as I mentioned, with the Costdilly Consortium, many of the same members, but expertise in a range of liver biology and translational clinical pathology. We have come up with this project. So get the popcorn out, I think. So there's this, what's the connection between our project is called Halt Ronan. And so there is actually a connection between, Ronan the film, Halt Ronan, and Samurai. So bear with me, I'll try and explain that. So the samurai are, in the medieval times, they were samurai who lost their masters through war or whatever, called Ronin, and they were either kind of good Ronin or bad Ronin. And in the film, Ronin and Robert De Niro, they're chasing that suitcase, remember? And years ago, so there was the baddies chasing the bad Ronin, chasing the suitcase, and the good Ronin were trying to stop them. So what is halt Ronin? So we are trying to halt the bad Ronin, which is bad inflammation. Because remember, there's good inflammation, bad inflammation. Gets a certain point in liver disease, inflammation can be bad news and is driven by comorbidities, as I mentioned, like high blood pressure, diabetes. Our goal is to halt chronic inflammation. Now, this will be achieved, we hope, by developing models and hopefully detecting diagnostic biomarkers in our in vitro models, pair with clinical samples, and to diagnose liver disease earlier, so we halt chronic inflammation part, then you don't have the disease later on. This is it in a nutshell. So Halt Ronan is collaboration with Edinburgh, Napier, and 18 institutes around Europe. And so as I mentioned, this is the clinical part. So we basically take the different liver cell types of the functional unit, the acinus, and we make in vitro in the lab disease in a dish models of the progression from healthy to disease liver. So we have three-dimensional spheroids of all the cell types that are important, and organoids, which can be from patients' skin. You might have heard of precision medicine. We also use liver chips, which I can show you in a moment. But so we have to validate all this data, which is quite challenging, but we use existing data and developing data with colleagues in Spain who have a large clinical cohort. We have 8 centers in Spain, clinical hub of clinical samples of liver disease. We compare our disease in a dish models in the lab with these clinical data, but also with animal data, because these are still used to some extent. And so this is quite a complex wheel of fortune, hopefully, and it requires a lot of, I'm going to say AI, because everybody's using it now, artificial intelligence, machine learning approaches to integrate the data to see, if we truly have robust prognostic biomarkers shown on the right here. And this can provide also these models we use in the lab, mechanistic insight in the disease process, and ultimately for druggable therapeutic. a little technical bit. Okay. So again, this is just put another way. So to do multi-level disease modeling, we need all the cell types that are in this functional unit. And we use models, different varieties of models. I mentioned the 3D ones, but liver on a chip. And to do the disease on a dish, we add oleate for fat droplets and a cocktail called LPON, which gives fat droplets plus inflammation. So that's a McDonald's diet. And this multi-level disease modeling requires a multi-level approach, with all the tools at our disposal in the lab. And focus on the liver chip, because it's a dynamic system we use, and it's really gives a nice model of what's a more realistic model, because it's you have fluid flow which emulates blood flow, which of course happens in the body. And this slide just shows, on the right there, the multiplex analysis we use in the real world, in the lab, to try and decipher these signals we're getting from the disease in a dish models. That's the technical. Future research mentioned, there's a whole list of applications of these models, because they're quite unique, in fact, because they encompass this functional unit. Going apart from Maso-D-MASH, is drug-induced liver injury, organ-to-organ dialogue or crosstalk, and even liver stage malaria as well. And this, don't think I heard this on Top of the Pops, but this is quite prophetic. Tom Waits, who a little bit about, he wrote this song, but of course there was no Maso-D then, there was no fatty liver in 1977. So we, in fact, published a paper 10 years ago and found part of the coagulation machinery of the cells in the human liver reduce fibrinogen as a possible signal, as a risk factor for cardiovascular applications in Maso-D. And this paper below it, just published in Science 2 years ago, kind of similar thing, but in mice. We're quite excited about this liver-heart axis we can set up in the lab. This is how it might work. This is lots of crosstalk between normal biology, but crosstalk between organs, free fatty acids, and the liver. The heart signals back with regulate blood supply, oxygen tension levels. But it can also release signals that can affect the liver. So this is a really exciting area. The good news, diet and exercise, you can, reduce your chances of risk. You know the story. You're 5 a day and all this. It really makes a difference. And I think Sting would like this song, set to music. Every sip you take and meal you make shapes your liver health, which is, it's a very nice lyric. So this is endorsed by the various liver associations, but also the Scotsman. So on World Liver Day, 2 months ago, we had this article. David Callan helped, if he's in the audience, very quickly done. They wanted an article to do with World Liver Day in 2 or 3 days. So lessons learned, that's it. Love of science, curiosity, never forget. These are things that I've, kind of become part of me, I suppose, over these years and decades. And don't try and do Napier logo. Kind of tricky. Lifelong learning contribution. The 3 Ps: perseverance, perseverance, perseverance. You need that to, carry on.